Tropical storm Bertha continues to strengthen. Hi friends, Rusty back here at Meteo Mundo. We're your home for Caribbean weather, keeping an eye on what's happening in the northern Gulf. The latest details on Bertha, we'll get into it right now. Bertha has continued to outperform expectations, unfortunately, and winds continue to get stronger within the system. What you see right now on your screen, wind gusts in miles an hour. We have access to the live buoy data here at Meteo Mundo, and you'll see some really fresh winds, especially on the southeast quadrant of the storm. We've had some gusts today of over 50 miles an hour, but at the center of circulation right now, we do have maximum sustained winds of up to 60 miles an hour. Pressure's down to 955 millibars. Movement is off to the northwest right now at around 5 miles an hour. So Bertha continues to get closer to the southeast Louisiana coastline, with tropical storm warnings in effect from portions of the panhandle of Florida back to southeast Louisiana, and additional tropical storm watches in effect through south central Louisiana. Already tropical storm conditions to continuing to move into this area here. Let me show you what's happening right now with the radar presentation. So I'm going to drop off the satellite data for just 1 second. Bring on the radar here. You'll continue to see that spin. We are bringing in some winds right now through portions of the western panhandle of Florida, including Pensacola, towards Mobile Bay, Alabama, then across the Mississippi Gulf Coast, including Pascagoula, Biloxi, on over towards Bay St. Louis, Lake Pontchartrain, back down towards New Orleans and Grand Isle. Easily right now 30 to 35 miles an hour with some higher gusts, but the northern side of the storm is also a little bit weaker. There is still some drier air coming in right now, so relatively speaking, when I bring back on our satellite imagery here and I switch over to the water vapor imagery, you'll see that there is a little bit of an undercut of the rain right now. So we haven't had a lot of heavy flooding rains as of yet. And at this point in time, all of the significant rain is south of the center of circulation. So I think the one big question mark here is how much rain we're really going to get. But we do expect tropical storm conditions across the panhandle of Florida, deeper into Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana as we move into tonight and throughout the day on Wednesday, and in some areas even on Thursday. So yes, we have gotten rid of the second named storm of the Atlantic hurricane season. That is Bertha. Next on the list is going to be Cristobal. The one thing that we'll continue to see, though, is onshore winds. And that's going to cause a problem when we're talking about the opportunity for some storm surge. This is the latest storm surge potential out of Bertha, all the way back here to the Big Bend of Florida near Apalachicola Bay, then on over towards Indian Pass west. The opportunity for 1, 2, maybe even 3-foot storm surge. Right now, the most significant storm surge of 2 to 4 feet is likely from the Mississippi-Alabama state line back down to the mouth of the Mississippi River, including places like Grand Isle, back towards New Orleans, Biloxi, Gulfport, Pascagoula included in that 2 to 4 foot storm surge. Then on over towards the Cameron Parish line, you have around a 1 to 3 foot storm surge. So that, especially during high tide cycles, could cause some coastal flooding in those areas. You'll see some of the information scrolling at the bottom of your screen as far as the opportunity for that flooding and the wind threat as well. Now let's talk about what could be happening with this storm as we go over the next couple of days. I'm going to switch back over to our visible satellite imagery here. Where is this going to go? The first thing is, how strong is it going to be? Look, winds are 60 miles an hour. It's already outperformed what most of the models have shown. Officially, the Hurricane Center has it getting no stronger than sustained winds of 60 miles an hour. The centerline track takes it over southeast Louisiana, kind of skirting the coastal parishes, and then moving right along the coastline towards Lake Charles, and then Beaumont, Texas, and just to the east of Houston. But quickly weakening as we get into late Wednesday and in on Thursday. Now that, of course, is what the Hurricane Center's showing you right now with our cone of uncertainty. Some of the southern models keeping it offshore, others driving it further inland into Louisiana in a quicker time frame. But what do the models show? We'll start with the European AI Ensemble members. Nice slow loop for you guys. This one is the one that's most in line with the Hurricane Center in the short term and then drops farther south into the west. Now, some of the ensemble members dissipate Bertha well before we get into Thursday afternoon, but the ones that hold it together drop it farther south along the coastline, closer to places like Corpus Christi rather than Houston. So if you do live up and down the Texas coastline, this is a storm you really want to keep an eye out for. Hopefully the impacts won't be significant across the state, but if the storm can hold together and it stays over water, there could still be some impacts headed your way Thursday and into Friday. Looking at our high resolution tropical models, this is the half A. This is the wind gusts. So this does have landfall in southeast Louisiana. You can see the really strong winds are still offshore, but certainly tropical storm conditions throughout Louisiana, and then quickly fading as it gets into East Texas. You're looking at no big significant impacts for East Texas and even southwest Louisiana on the half A model. Again, these are your strong winds, your gusts, rather than sustained winds. I'm going to show you the outlier now, the one that's the strongest. And again, take this one with a big grain of salt, my friends, but the HMON sustained winds, because it just skirts Grand Isle and heads southwest. We do have some hurricane sustained winds out of this. You'll see a 96 pop on your screen, and then a stronger storm move right up towards Galveston Bay and just south of Galveston Bay and the Houston areas, but up and down portions of the Texas coastline will be a problem. Now, if this does make landfall as a stronger storm south of Houston and Galveston, of course, that would put the storm surge on the east side and keep places like Houston and Galveston on the dirty side of the storm. But again, this is the outlier for sure. Now, rainfall totals, again, out of all of the impacts for the storm, maybe the least significant, because if this stays as a relatively oblong storm with all of the deeper moisture off to the south of the center of circulation, and even if the circulation skirts southeast Louisiana, on the European model, you're looking at the 6, 8, 10 plus inches of rain staying offshore, in some areas only getting a few inches. So I'm more concerned about coastal flooding with storm surge rather than the tropical downpours causing a lot of inland river flooding. Look, inland flooding is a huge concern with tropical systems, especially wet, broad, sloppy tropical systems. But this one, with Bertha keeping all of the worst weather to the south, wouldn't be the worst case scenario for coastal sides of the panhandle of Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. But storm surge potential is going to be an issue here to go along with tropical storm force winds. Again, already we're beginning to ramp up the winds up to 40 miles an hour with fresher gusts, and we're likely to see consistent, sustained tropical storm conditions, winds of 39 miles an hour or greater, beginning to move into the areas on the map later on this Tuesday, throughout the day, Wednesday, and in some areas even on Thursday as well. So friends, I'm going to closely monitor the situation for you here. Again, looking at our weather headlines, the impact updates, the storm surge and the damaging winds, and then we talked about the tropical models, where Bertha is headed. I want to round this all out by showing you again the latest details. Winds are 60 miles an hour, moving northwest at 5, tropical storm conditions from Florida to Louisiana, the potential for up to a 4-foot storm surge, damaging wind gusts. Make sure that you take your lightweight unsecured objects in your yards, make sure that you secure them. Some coastal flooding is likely, especially, of course, in the high tide cycles. Continue to monitor the situation. I'll do so as well. Again, some additional information will be scrolling at the bottom of your screen. For all of our friends here along the Gulf Coast, we wish you guys the best. Again, hopefully this will be a system that we can all tolerate the impacts, but there should, unfortunately, be some significant impacts in some areas here, especially with some water coming on shore, and that's a situation I'll be monitoring for you guys very closely. We'll move on to what's happening across the rest of our area on this Tuesday, and I got to tell you something. It's a relatively quiet forecast at this point in time. Again, you'll see our information hub at the bottom of your screen. There's some heat advisories in effect right now, but a few marine issues, but we've actually had a fairly quiet Tuesday outside of Tropical Storm Bertha. Again, at this point in time, the Caribbean and the Atlantic Basin still closed for business for any tropical development. We'll take that. We have a mid-level trough that's moving through the Western Atlantic Basin right now. You can clearly see the march off towards the west, but it's also butting up against drier air, and so it hasn't been able to produce a lot of shower activity today. For the southeast side of the Bahamas, back to Turks and Caicos, Hispaniola has been dry. The southern extent of that trough does sneak into the U.S. and British Virgin Islands and portions of Puerto Rico, where we are seeing a few thunderstorms developing on the southwest sides of Puerto Rico. I'll show you that in the enhanced satellite imagery. Look at some of the thunderstorms developing there south of the Mayaguez area, west of Ponce. If you catch a shower, honestly, consider yourselves lucky, helping to cool things off. Still brisk winds. You can see St. Croix, Christiansted up to around a 30-mile-an-hour wind a little bit earlier in the day. Not a bad forecast for the Lesser Antilles in general. Leeward Islands looking pretty good. Notice that at the mid-levels, winds are actually out of the north and to the west. Surface-based winds are still going to be out of the east. I'll bring on our visible satellite imagery, and you'll still see your low-level winds and your cloud movement out of the east. It's the mid-level winds that are coming out of the west. Now, the convergence of that sometimes can spell enough lift in the atmosphere to produce some showers and storms, but relatively speaking for today, it's been a fairly dry forecast. Winds have not been an issue. The small craft advisories for the Leeward Islands have allowed to expire. We've mentioned it before, but more Saharan air is going to start to set up shop here, limiting some of the rain chances. And even on this visible satellite imagery loop, you can see some of that hazy imagery here that we had a little bit earlier in the day. Bring back on those 5-day forecasts for across our area. Again, here at Meteo Mundo, a lot of information on your screen, 45 cities. 5-day forecast, not just a 3-day forecast, but your full 5-day forecast. Temperatures in Fahrenheit and Celsius, rain chances each day. Again, no need to kind of do any conversions. We've got you covered here on the channel. Central American gyre still relatively active. Nothing too significant, though. We've had some good rain through portions of Panama and Costa Rica. Would expect some of that to lift into Nicaragua and Honduras. But I mentioned it in yesterday's video, drying out a bit for the Bay Islands, Belize City, the rest of Quintana Roo. Nice forecast, dry on the warmer side for our friends in Jamaica. A few isolated storms developing with the heat of the day. Central western parishes still favoring places from Clarendon Parish off towards the west. Maybe Manchester, maybe St. Elizabeth catches a few showers and storms, but it's pretty spotty in nature right now. Large wave and strong wind advisory continues for the offshore waters. Beautiful day in the Cayman Islands. Friends, as we move on to the rest of the forecast, do me a quick favor, hit that subscribe button for me if you haven't as of yet. Again, you got a question about the forecast, feel free to drop it in the comments section below. I do appreciate that as well. Let's talk about our next weather headline. That is going to be more Saharan dust returning back into our area. So let's take a look at what the model is going to be showing you here over the next, I believe I went all the way the next 10 days through the end of July. So we're going to have another push of Saharan air, northern side of the Lesser Antilles to the Greater Antilles, Turks and Caicos, and into the Bahamas, and then a second push right at the end of the month. So 2 more plumes of Saharan air likely to impact mainly our eastern and our northeast areas. I'm not sure how far southwest it gets. So for Central America, Quintana Roo, even Jamaica, Cayman Islands, and then back off to the Gulf Coast states, not as much of a concentration over the next 10 days, but we could certainly see this move into places like Antigua and Barbuda and the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic, Grand Turk back to the southeast Bahamas, eastern Cuba, potentially Jamaica again, at least for a time, but a little bit more concentrated back off towards the east. Looking at the rest of the weather headlines for the remainder of the time, we're going to take a look at your rain outlook coming up here in just a second. But I do want to, of course, mention real quickly what's happening in the Atlantic Basin with any tropical activity. Right now, all is quiet. However, as we get towards the end of July, we are starting to line up stronger tropical waves coming off the West African coast. Again, we've had one area with potential development last week that faded away very quickly. We could start to see, though, a little bit stronger tropical waves beginning to develop. Climatologically, it's this time of the year. Notice that the push of moisture is beginning to build north in latitude. This is a sign that the Saharan air layer is not going to be as concentrated with the waves coming off the West African coast. Yes, in the short term, the central Atlantic basin is still filled with drier air, but I'm starting to see a turn, if you will, to getting more moisture to develop as the waves develop, and that moisture kind of carries the waves and allows them to continue to develop the farther west in the basin that we go. And starting in early August is typically the time when that begins to happen, and that's exactly what I'm seeing right now. So let's get into what's going to be happening across the area here. We're going to bring up our models, switch that up for you guys real quick. You know, one thing, if you're still tuning in, by the way, about what was happening with Bertha, I did forget to show you guys the HER model, which is the high resolution rapid refresh. I had loaded that up. So I will show you guys this real quick. If you stuck around with me, you deserve to see this. I'm going to bring on the forecast models as well. So just dropping off a couple of the information points. Now, the one thing about the tropical models is they are in relatively good agreement, okay? Only a few of them stray farther south towards Corpus Christi, and only a few of them keep it inland far enough towards I-10 where it really basically falls apart before it gets to southwest Louisiana, places like Lake Charles. But on the high resolution rapid refresh, you can see that it's a very elongated area of rain. And we're going to have to push the center closer to land or keep it over land or slow it down one of those or several of those in combination to produce enough rain to cause widespread flooding issues. 2 to 4 inches of rain is in the official forecast, maybe up to 6 inches, and certainly any of the models that I've seen today haven't brought any more than that. So again, hopefully we avoid the flood threat out of this system, if nothing else, but the other variables are still a big problem in some spots. Okay, now let's move on to the rainfall across the rest of our area. Take me 1 second just to switch models and then fire that up. Here's the situation about that though, guys. You're not going to see big areas of rain over the next several days. Again, Saharan air coming back in. It's going to be a factor. Since I mentioned that we have our rain outlook, I'm going to bring that on. I've also got your marine forecasts across 25 major harbors, cruise ports, fishing areas of interest. You get high and low tides here. You get marine forecasts, including maximum wave heights and your water temperatures as well. So hopefully, again, you're appreciating and enjoying all of the information that's on your screen. If you do so, give me that quick like and subscription. I do appreciate that. Again, we're going to spin up better rain with our Central American gyre through Costa Rica and Panama and areas to the north. As we have mentioned many times, the East Pacific continues to be quite active. We have yet another named storm, Fausto, the 6th named storm of the East Pacific hurricane season. Likely number 7 is on the way. This one could have a little bit more impacts to portions of the Pacific coastline of Mexico, so I'll be monitoring that scenario. And of course, all of this shear in the Caribbean, things that keeps things quiet. We could have one push of rain in between Saharan air layers back into the Eastern Caribbean sometime over the weekend here for the most part. Would expect better rain chances for a time for TNT, Barbados, St. Lucia, Martinique, up towards Guadeloupe, maybe as far north as Antigua and Barbuda. Still expect the ABC Islands to be relatively quiet. And then far enough north, you're looking at more localized showers and storms than anything for places like Rotown, Tortola, Virgin Gorda, back towards Yost Van Dyke, Vieques and Culebra there off the east coast of Puerto Rico. Even the southeast side of the Bahamas and Turks and Caicos will be limited for rain chances. And then you get up towards Freeport, Lucaya, Grand Bahama, and our friends down in Nassau, New Providence. It's more about the heat than anything over the next 5 days. Rainfall outlook looks like this. Bring off those marine layers. Again, maximum here is over 1 foot, but offshore for the most part. Heavier rains, Costa Rica, Panama, and then everyone else pretty much stays in the lower tier. Still could see some fast-moving showers, but rain totals aren't going to be significant. Bermuda could catch some better showers and storms later in the week, and that could bring a couple of inches of rain to that island. Still got to watch out for the extremely potent waves. 10 to 12 foot waves out of Bertha. Gale conditions continue through the open waters of the central and western Caribbean. You have the large wave and strong wind advisory for the offshore waters of Jamaica, including Pedro and Morant Banks. Additional marine advisories could redevelop in the ABC Islands, maybe off towards the west, towards the Bay Islands and Belize. Does look better, though, for the eastern side of the area. I would not expect a lot of serious sea conditions for places like Barbados, TNT, and St. Lucia up the road towards Antigua and Barbuda over the next several days. Friends, I'm out of time. Thank you for making Meteo Mundo a part of your daily routine. Again, you got a question about the forecast, feel free to drop it in the comment section below. I'll be monitoring Bertha and the rest of our area, and I'll see you tomorrow with the latest. Until then, stay safe. Take care.